The seventh hour of the morning has always been mine. The house is quiet, only the old clock in the living room chiming the time with the same pedantry it had been doing for the past 35 years. I woke up as usual without an alarm clock, a habit developed from decades of working at the power plant. My joints ached, reminding me of my age. 77 years is no joke, especially when you face each morning alone. My house in Lancaster, 2 stories with a small garden behind, is too big for one person. But to sell it and move to a smaller apartment would mean erasing the last memories I have of Martha and Edwin. There's a piece of my family in every corner. There's a picture of Martha on the mantelpiece, smiling the way only she could, with a slight slyness in her eyes. And here are Edwin's school awards. Who knew my only son's life would be cut short at 37? Car accident. Drunk driver. None of these explanations change anything. Edwin is gone, and I'm still here. I made myself a simple breakfast of oatmeal with dried fruit and tea. Martha always insisted on a full breakfast. "Gilbert, you must eat properly," she used to say. After her death from cancer 8 years ago, I ate a half-eaten meal for a while, but then decided it would be disrespectful to her memory. Now I try to maintain some semblance of a healthy diet, although cooking for myself alone seems pointless. After breakfast, I did the usual chores, watered the houseplants, checked the mail, bills, ads, and a catalog of gardening supplies. Nothing of any particular interest. Out in the garden, I noticed that the rose bush that Martha and I had planted in our first year of marriage needed trimming again. That bush had outlived us all, both Martha and Edwin. "Good morning, Gilbert," I heard a familiar voice. Ida Pemberton, my neighbor, was waving at me over the fence. She's 69, a former school teacher, and the only person on our street who talks to me regularly. "Morning, Ida," I replied, approaching the fence. "How's your arthritis?" "You'd better not ask," she waved me away. "The weather changes. My knees know it before the weather forecasters do. Have you had breakfast?" I nodded. Ida often invited me over for breakfast or brought me fresh baked goods. She was widowed about the same time I was, and we supported each other, though our relationship never crossed the boundaries of friendly neighborliness. "Did Noah call?" she asked as if by chance, but I knew the question wasn't casual. Ida was one of the few people who had seen the relationship with my grandson change over the past few years. "No, not for about 2 weeks now, but that's normal. He's a busy man," I replied, trying to sound casual. Ida pressed her lips together but didn't comment. She knew the situation too well. Noah is my only grandson and my last blood relation to Edwin. When my son and his wife Carol died, Noah was 22 years old, just finishing college. I helped him financially, supported him emotionally, and helped him get back on his feet. For the first few years, our relationship was warm and close. He came up often on weekends, called almost every day, and consulted on important issues. I saw him as an extension of Edwin, the same blue eyes, the same way he tilted his head slightly when he was thinking about something. Everything had changed 4 years ago when Noah married Veronica. She worked as a receptionist at the same dental clinic where he had been treated. A beautiful, statuesque woman with ambitions that clearly exceeded what they could do together. I was happy for my grandson. He deserved to be happy after all the losses. At the wedding, I presented them with a check for a large sum as seed money to buy a house. Their gratitude seemed sincere. Gradually, the visits became less frequent, the calls shorter. Noah was pursuing a career as a tax consultant. Veronica was advancing in her clinic. They moved to a more upscale Lancaster neighborhood, bought new cars. Every time I saw them, the conversation somehow came down to money, the new furniture, the renovations, the vacations they were planning. "Grandpa, you realize you have to invest in your image early in your career," Noah explained when I cautiously inquired about their financial situation after another expensive purchase. "Clients won't trust their taxes to someone who looks poor," Veronica added with a smile that never reached her eyes. Gradually, I began to notice a certain pattern. They showed up when they needed something. Extra money for a kitchen renovation, to borrow for a new car, to pay for an expensive vacation. We'll be sure to pay it back, Grandpa, as soon as Noah gets a promotion/bonus/new client. The money never came back, but I never reminded. I had enough. A 35-year pension as an electrical engineer, plus successful stock investments in the company where I worked, plus a modest lifestyle. Over the years, I had accumulated an impressive sum of about $2 million, including the value of the house. I could afford to help my only grandchild, especially since there was no one else to spend the money on. But each time, I felt more and more acutely that our relationship was becoming more one-sided. Noah and Veronica showed up with courtesy visits on holidays, brought formal birthday gifts, but their real interest in my life was gone. They listened politely to stories about my garden or a book I'd read, but quickly turned the conversation to themselves or financial matters. "You're too kind, Gilbert," Ida told me. "They're taking advantage of you." "This is my grandson, Ida, the only family I have left." Family isn't just blood, it's caring, respect, love. Do you see that from their side? I didn't answer because the answer was obvious to both of us, but I kept hoping that Noah would come to his senses, that this temporary blindness to material possessions would pass, that Edwin's genes would take over. That evening the phone rang. It was Noah. "Grandpa, how are you? It's been a long time since we spoke." "Hello, Noah. Yes, it's been a week or two since we last spoke. I'm doing the same old thing. How's Veronica?" "Great, just great. Listen, we've got a little event coming up. Veronica got a promotion at the clinic. She's now the head administrator. We're having a little dinner this Saturday to celebrate. You'll come, right?" His voice sounded unusually enthusiastic. I'd only been invited to their house twice in the last year, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and both times I'd felt more like a formal guest than a member of the family. "Of course I'll come. What time?" "Let's make it 6 p.m. Don't cook anything special, just come. And grandfather," he paused, "my co-workers will be there with their wives, so, well, you understand." "Understand what, Noah?" "Well, just be yourself, but don't tell too many of your stories about the power plant. People aren't really interested in that, you know." I felt something squeeze inside. 40 years of professional life, engineering projects I was proud of, reduced to uninteresting stories. "I understand, Noah. Don't worry. I won't bother your guests." "Good. See you Saturday then." He hung up without even asking how I was really doing or if I needed help with anything. I sat in the chair looking at Edwin's picture on the wall. My son had always treated me with respect and love. What had gone wrong with Noah? Where had I gone wrong? That he had gone from a warm, caring young man to a calculating adult for whom I had become nothing more than a source of funding for his lifestyle. Perhaps I had indulged it for too long. Perhaps, in trying to replace his father, I had neglected to teach him the value of family relationships. Or maybe it was the influence of Veronica, whose material ambitions clearly outstripped their joint income. I couldn't help but think of Noah and Veronica waiting for me to die so they could inherit everything I had. The thought had haunted me for a long time, but I'd chased it away. Today, after that phone call, it came back with renewed vigor. In the will I'd made after Edwin's death, I'd named Noah as my sole heir. It seemed natural. Who else should I leave the estate to but my only descendant? But now I wondered if that had been the right decision. The next morning I called Ida. "Would you like to come over for tea? Have some blueberry pie from Martha's recipe." Ida came in half an hour later bringing a jar of homemade jam and a fresh issue of the local newspaper. "You look tired, Gilbert. Didn't sleep well. Noah called yesterday. Invited me to dinner on Saturday. Veronica got a promotion." "Wow, what an honor. And what? No request for money?" "Not yet, no. But, his co-workers will be there. He asked me to." not to be to myself. Ida snorted. What does that even mean? Ashamed of your own grandfather? I shook my head. It's just that he finds my stories about work boring for his guests. Gilbert, Ida put her hand on mine, you realize you deserve better treatment, right? You've given your whole life to work and family. Your engineering projects provide electricity for half the city still today. And your own grandson tells you to shut up at a family dinner? I stared at the steam rising from the teacup. Ida was right, of course. But what could I do? Noah was all I had left of Edwin, the last thread linking me to my son. I'll go to that dinner, I said at last. But I'm beginning to wonder if Noah really deserves to be my sole heir. Ida looked at me in surprise. In all the years we'd known each other, I'd never talked about my will or my inheritance. I've always believed that family is the most important thing, I continued. But if I'm only seen as an ATM, maybe there are more dignified ways to dispose of what I've accumulated over a lifetime. This is a serious decision, Gilbert. Don't make it in haste. Of course, but, sometimes it's time to face the truth. I've turned a blind eye for too long for the sake of Edwin's memory. We finished our tea in thoughtful silence. Saturday lay ahead, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this dinner might be the turning point in my relationship with my only grandson. On Saturday, I woke up earlier than usual. Noah and Veronica's upcoming dinner had mixed feelings. On the one hand, I was excited to spend time with my grandson. On the other hand, our last few encounters had left a bitter residue. I opened my closet, choosing what to wear. The suit seemed too formal, the jeans too casual. I settled on dark blue pants and a light blue shirt and jacket. Martha always said that color accentuated my eyes. Once upon a time, Martha and I loved to host guests. Our house was always full of friends, co-workers, and relatives. Edwin grew up in an atmosphere of warmth and fellowship. I remembered how my son, as a teenager, enjoyed participating in adult conversations, asking questions, sharing his thoughts. Noah, on the other hand, had always been more withdrawn, even before he met Veronica. Perhaps it was the early loss of his parents. I decided not to go empty-handed and stopped at the candy store for dessert. I chose cheesecake. Veronica had once mentioned that she loved it. I also bought a bottle of good wine, remembering that Noah preferred red semi-dry. Their house was in a new neighborhood in Lancaster, built up with modern cottages. One story, with large windows and a neat lawn. It looked more modest than the neighbors, but I knew that I'd actually paid the down payment for it myself, having loaned Noah a substantial sum 3 years ago. I parked my old but reliable Ford next to Veronica's new crossover. The car was obviously not cheap. Next to it was Noah's sports car, another recent acquisition he had proudly told me about on the phone. Veronica opened the door, dressed in an elegant black dress. Her dark hair was gathered into an elaborate style, and around her neck was a pearl necklace I recognized. It was my gift for their second wedding anniversary. "Gilbert, you're right on time," she said with a smile that wasn't reflected in her cold gray eyes. "Hello, Veronica. You look beautiful. Congratulations on your promotion." "Thank you. Come on in. Noah's in the living room." I handed her a bag of cheesecake and wine. She looked inside. "Oh, how nice. Although we already have a dessert from a French pastry chef. But yours, we'll put it on the table, too." First shot. I'd long ago noticed that Veronica was a master at making such remarks, a kind of gratitude, but with a slight tinge of disdain. The living room was furnished with modern furniture that hadn't been there the last time I'd visited at Christmas. A large corner sofa, a glass and metal coffee table, a new home theater system with a huge screen. "Grandpa!" Noah stood up to meet me. In a dark gray suit and a trendy haircut, he looked like a successful young professional. I could see Edwin's features in him, though they were becoming less and less each year. We hugged, but somehow formally, without the warmth we'd had before. "You look great, Noah," How's work going? Things are looking up, Grandpa. Can you believe I signed a contract with Lancaster Holdings last week? That opens up a whole new perspective. Congratulations, that's a serious client. Yeah, finally my efforts are starting to pay off. By the way, how do you like our new sofa? It just arrived from Italy last week. I eyed the massive piece of furniture. It was clearly worth more than Noah's monthly income. It looks expensive. It does, Noah confirmed proudly. Veronica insisted on this model. She says that if we have wealthy clients coming in, the furnishings should match. I nodded, not commenting on the obvious discrepancy between their income and expenses. My loans and gifts over the past few years had amounted to an impressive sum, but apparently it wasn't enough to maintain the lifestyle I desired. Veronica returned from the kitchen with glasses of wine. Have a seat, Gilbert. Dinner is almost ready. I ordered it from the new caterer that caters to the mayor of Lancaster. You can't surprise anyone with home cooking these days, can you? I remembered how Martha used to spend hours in the kitchen cooking for guests. She believed that food cooked with love tasted better than any restaurant meal. But I remained silent, simply nodding. How are the bathroom renovations coming along? I asked, remembering that it was one of the last projects Noah had talked about. Oh, we decided to completely remodel both bathrooms, Veronica replied. We installed a jacuzzi tub and a steam shower. Would you like to see it? Without waiting for an answer, she led me down the hallway. The new bathroom looked like something out of an interior design magazine. Marble, glass, chrome details. Impressive, I said sincerely. Must have cost a lot of money. We don't skimp on quality, Veronica replied with a slight chuckle. Besides, it's a real estate investment. Someday we'll sell this house and buy something bigger. With every improvement, its value goes up. Back in the living room, I noticed Noah glancing nervously at his watch. Is something wrong? I asked. No. It's just, I've got guests coming in at 8. Richard, my immediate supervisor, and his wife Elizabeth. Also, Greg, a partner from Lancaster Holdings, and his wife. Very important people, Grandpa. I understand, I nodded. I'll try not to ruin the evening. Noah blushed slightly. That's not what I meant. It's just, they're used to a certain level of socializing. Talk to them about, about traveling, about culture. They won't appreciate the technical details of running a power plant. I felt a prick of resentment. My professional life, which I was proud of, was once again being reduced to boring technical details. Don't worry, Noah. I know how to behave in public. I haven't spent my whole life locked up in technical rooms. Veronica beckoned us to the table. The dining room, like the living room, was furnished with new furniture. A massive dark wood dining table, high-backed chairs, a crystal chandelier over the table. On the snow-white tablecloth stood expensive dishes I hadn't seen before. Is this a new set? I inquired. Yes, French porcelain, Veronica answered proudly. Noah gave it to me for our wedding anniversary. Doesn't my husband have great taste? Noah smiled smugly, though I suspected that such a purchase was a serious blow to their budget. They served appetizers, some sort of miniature caviar and shrimp tartlets. I'd never been a gourmet, preferring simple food, but I admitted it looked spectacular. So, Gilbert, Veronica began, pouring the wine, how is your health? At your age, that's the most important thing, isn't it? There was that tone again, seemingly concerned but with a subtle reminder of my age. Thank you, Veronica. I feel pretty good for my age. I get regular checkups. The doctors say my heart and lungs are in good shape. That's wonderful, she nodded. My grandfather died at 69. Just fell asleep and didn't wake up. Such an easy death, right? I almost choked on my wine. Noah threw his wife a warning glance, but she pretended not to notice. Our clinic, by the way, now offers comprehensive exams for elderly patients, she continued. Maybe you should sign up, with a discount for relatives, of course. Thank you, but I'm satisfied with my current doctor. I replied. Dr. Meyer has been seeing me for 20 years. Suit yourself. Just a suggestion. Noah hurriedly changed the subject. Grandpa, did you hear the news? The lot next door to your house is up for sale. Some construction company wants to buy the whole block for a new project. I looked at him surprised. No, I haven't heard. Ida didn't say anything. Well, that neighbor of yours isn't always in the know. Noah waved his hand dismissively. But it might be interesting to you. If they're buying up the whole neighborhood, your house could go up in value considerably. I don't plan to sell the house. Of course you are, Noah agreed quickly. Just saying that's good news. Your assets are going up in value. My assets. Not the house where I'd lived most of my life, not the place full of memories of Martha and Edwin, but assets. I was beginning to realize how my grandson and his wife perceived me and my property. Veronica brought out the main course, some sort of exquisite meat dish with a side of vegetables I didn't even know the name of. This is stuffed veal with truffles and Porto sauce, she announced. The best restaurants in Paris serve such a thing. I tasted it cautiously. The flavor was unusual but pleasant. The portion was so small, however, that I doubted I would be full. Very tasty, I praised sincerely, but I'm afraid my appetite has remained at the level of a working man, not a gourmet. Veronica pursed her lips slightly. Modern gastronomy values quality over quantity, Gilbert. Besides, at your age, it's best not to overeat. Another reminder of age. I was beginning to sense that this was no accident, but a definite tactic. Noah hurriedly turned the conversation around. By the way, Grandpa, I've been meaning to ask you for a long time. Do you still hold Lancaster Energy's shares? They've gone up in value a lot in the last quarter. Yes, I do. It's been a good investment. Have you ever thought about diversifying your portfolio? I could recommend some promising companies. My clients are showing excellent returns. Thanks, Noah, but at my age, I deliberately emphasized those words looking at Veronica. I don't want to take risks. I prefer stable investments. But you could make a much better income, Noah insisted, especially considering the size of your capital. I noted to myself that Noah seemed well aware of the size of my capital, although I had never discussed the details of my finances with him. I have enough of what I have, I replied calmly, and I'm always happy to spend the surplus on my family. At these words, Veronica's eyes gleamed visibly. She exchanged a quick glance with Noah. Speaking of family, she said, we're thinking of expanding the house, adding a wing with another bedroom and an office for Noah. It's so important to have a separate workspace now, especially when you're working with important clients. Yes, Noah picked up on that. It will increase the value of the house substantially. A great investment. I nodded, not commenting on the obvious. Once again, they were trying to hint at the need for financial assistance by disguising it as an investment. And how much will it cost? I asked bluntly. Noah named an amount that made my eyes pop up to my forehead. It was money that could buy a small house. A substantial sum, I remarked neutrally. Yeah, but it's an investment for the future, Veronica quickly added. Plus, we'll have more room when, if you ever decide your house is too big for one person. There it was, a hint that I might sell my house and move in with them, or rather that after I died, they would get the house and sell it. My house is just the right size, I replied, and I plan to live in it for the rest of my life. There was an awkward pause. Veronica was the first to break the silence. Of course, Gilbert, no one is suggesting you move, just thinking about the future. About the future, I repeated, looking her straight in the eye. Noah hurriedly interjected, Grandpa, I wanted to show you our new sound system. Remember how you always loved classical music? He led me back into the living room where there was indeed an impressive sound system with speakers the size of a small closet. The latest model, Noah said proudly. Cost a fortune, but the sound is amazing. Take a listen." He turned on something symphonic, Mozart, I think. The sound was indeed superb, but I wondered again about the cost of all this splendor. "Impressive," I said. "But Noah, I have to ask, are you coping with all these expenses? The new furniture, the bathroom renovations, now this system, and plans to expand the house?" Noah frowned slightly. "We're investing in our lives, Grandpa. Yeah, money's a little tight right now, but that's about to change. This contract with Lancaster Holdings is just the beginning. In a couple years, I plan to start my own consulting firm." "I'm happy for you, Noah. Really happy. I'm just worried that you're making too many financial commitments." "Don't worry," he put a hand on my shoulder. "We've got everything under control." Veronica beckoned us back to the dining room where dessert was already served, an exquisite brownie decorated with gold foil. My humble cheesecake stood to the side, untouched. "Are the guests coming soon?" I asked, noticing it was almost 8 o'clock. "Yeah, any minute now," Noah replied, glancing nervously at his watch again. "Grandpa, I wanted to warn you. Richard is my boss. He's a very powerful man in the tax field. And Greg at Lancaster Holdings, too. A lot depends on their opinion for my career." "I understand, Noah. Just keep it simple, okay? Nothing too technical or old-fashioned. And please don't tell that story about the power plant strike in the 70s. It's too politicized." I felt resentment building up inside. The strike story I sometimes told was an important part of my life. I was proud of how we engineers were able to find a compromise between the administration and the workers, averting a potential disaster for the city. "Okay, Noah, I'll keep it simpler. You don't have to worry, I won't ruin my impression of you in front of your important guests." He didn't seem to catch the bitterness in my voice and nodded with relief. "Thank you, Grandpa. It's very important to me." The doorbell rang. Veronica jumped up, fixing her hair and dress. "They're here. Noah, make sure everything's ready for cocktails." Noah rushed to the bar in the corner of the living room and Veronica went to open the door. I remained seated at the table, suddenly feeling superfluous in this house built with my money, among the things I'd bought with my help. Voices came from the hallway. Veronica greeted the guests with exaggerated joy. I took a deep breath, preparing myself to meet the people I was to be easier in front of. 2 couples entered the living room, dressed with the kind of casual elegance that signaled wealth. The men were in expensive suits without ties, the women in fancy dresses and jewelry that even my unsophisticated eye identified as not cheap. "Richard, Elizabeth, Greg, Pamela," Veronica glowed with joy. "Welcome. We're so happy to see you." Noah approached, holding out his hands in greeting. "Come on in. Make yourself comfortable. What can I get you?" The guests made their way into the living room, looking around with interest. I noticed Richard's gaze, a stout man in his 50s with graying hair, linger on the expensive sound system for a moment, and something akin to approval flashed in his eyes. "And this is my grandfather, Gilbert Hawthorne." Noah introduced me with a slight strain in his voice. I stood up, extending my hand in greeting. "Pleased to meet you." "Gilbert," Richard interjected, "the electrical engineer from the city's power plant." I looked at him in surprise. "Yes, I worked there for 40 years. Do you know about it?" "Of course," Richard shook my hand vigorously. "You were the chief engineer for the modernization project of the 70s. It was a revolution in our region's power supply. I was writing my thesis on the economic impact of that modernization." I was pleasantly surprised and honored. Yes, it was a complex project. We implemented an entirely new load-sharing system that increased efficiency by 20%. "And it's still working as far as I know." Richard turned to Noah. "Your grandfather is a true legend in engineering circles. I didn't realize you were his grandson." Noah looked both surprised and embarrassed. "Yes, Grandpa worked at the power plant for many years. Veronica quickly intervened. Let's go into the living room. I've prepared cocktails. We settled into the living room. Greg, the second guest, a lean man with sharp facial features, also showed interest. Mr. Hawthorne, is it true that during the strike of '78, you were the one who offered the compromise solution that saved the city from a blackout? I cast a quick glance at Noah, who shook his head almost imperceptibly. His request to keep it simple and not mention the strike was clearly at odds with the interest of the guests. It's a collective credit, I replied diplomatically. We had a great engineering team. Too modest, Richard smiled. I've read the archival materials and your name is specifically mentioned there. Richard's wife, Elizabeth, an elegant woman with a short haircut, asked with interest. And you've worked in the same place all your life. That's so unusual in these times. Yes, I nodded. It was the norm for my generation. We valued stability and being able to see the long-term results of our work. Fascinating, echoed Pamela, Greg's wife, a young woman with long blonde hair. My father is also an engineer, and he always said that true professionalism only comes with years of practice. I noticed Veronica starting to get nervous. Her plan for small talk clearly didn't include such interest in my person. What do you do now, in retirement? Greg asked. Tending the garden, reading, occasionally consulting on technical matters for my former co-workers. Nothing much, but I don't get bored. You have such a wealth of professional experience, Richard remarked. Perhaps you could give a talk to our younger staff about the development of the region's energy industry? A historical perspective is very important. Before I could respond, Veronica intervened. Oh, I'm afraid that would be too tiring for Gilbert. At his age, it's better to conserve his strength. I feel quite capable of giving an hour-long lecture, I objected, looking directly at Veronica, and I'd be happy to share my experience. Richard nodded. Great. Then I'll contact you through Noah to discuss the details. Veronica quickly changed the subject. And how are your children, Elizabeth? Did Jason get into college? The conversation turned to children and education. I noticed Noah relax as the attention shifted from me to other topics. Veronica skillfully guided the conversation, avoiding returning to my work or experiences. When it was time for dessert, we moved back to the dining room. I sat down in my original seat, feeling mixed emotions. On the one hand, I was pleased that my professional contribution was appreciated, but on the other hand, Noah and Veronica's attitude clearly showed that they were ashamed of my past, preferring to see me as just an elderly relative with money. Dessert was served with special solemnity. Veronica brought an exquisite cake with gold foil. My humble cheesecake remained untouched on the side. What's this? Elizabeth inquired, pointing to the box of cheesecake. Oh, Gilbert brought this, Veronica said with slight condescension. But we already had a dessert ordered from the Grand Hotel's pastry chef. I love homemade cheesecake, Elizabeth smiled. Can I have a piece? Veronica opened the box with poorly concealed distaste. Sure, although it's not homemade, it's from the pastry shop on Maple Street. Perfect, Elizabeth winked at me. I prefer simple flavors to gourmet ones. This small gesture of encouragement was unexpectedly nice. While Veronica cut the cheesecake, Greg inquired, Noah, how long have you lived in this house? About 3 years, Noah replied. We bought it right after we got married. It's a nice neighborhood, Greg nodded. Real estate here has been steadily increasing in value. Yeah, we made a good investment, Noah threw a quick glance in my direction. I had to sweat the down payment, though. I smiled faintly. Sweat was an interesting choice of word to describe the request for the $150,000 loan I'd given them that they'd never paid back. Did you help your grandson with the purchase? Pamela suddenly asked, turning to me. There was an awkward pause. Noah froze with fork in hand. Veronica went slightly pale. Yeah, I helped a little with the down payment, I replied neutrally. It's so great when a family supports each other, Pamela continued. My parents helped Greg and I when we bought the house, too. Without them, we never would have been able to pull off a property like this early in our careers. Yes, family support is very important, I said, looking at Noah. Richard turned to me. How long have you been widowed, Gilbert? 8 years ago. My wife Martha died of cancer. My condolences, Richard said sincerely. It must be hard to live alone after so many years of marriage. Yes, the first few years were very difficult, but you gradually get used to being alone. But you have Noah and Veronica, Elizabeth remarked. Having family around is such a blessing. I nodded without commenting. Happiness wasn't the word I'd use to describe our current relationship. Speaking of family, Elizabeth turned to Veronica. Tell me, how did you and Noah meet? Was it love at first sight? Veronica perked up, clearly excited at the opportunity to talk about herself. Oh, it was fate. Noah came to our clinic with a toothache and I was working at the front desk. He was in so much pain that I broke the rules and walked him to the doctor without an appointment. He was so grateful that he took me out to dinner. What a romantic story, Pamela smiled. Yes, and a year later we got married, Veronica continued. And now we're building our lives together. We plan to expand the house next year, add a wing with a study for Noah and another bedroom. Sounds ambitious, Greg remarked. Projects like this usually require serious investment. We've got it under control, Noah replied quickly, casting a nervous glance in my direction. Pamela, looking at me, suddenly asked, Do you help Noah and Veronica a lot? It must be nice to be able to support a young family. Before I could answer, Veronica said with a slight chuckle, Oh, Gilbert is very generous. He's like our family servant, always on hand when we need help around the house or financial support. There was silence. I felt the blood rush from my face. Servant. The word echoed in my head. Noah turned pale and cast a warning glance at his wife. The guest looked confused. Veronica didn't seem to notice the effect she had produced and continued with a smile. I mean, he's always willing to help. That's so nice of him. But it was too late. The word had already been spoken and there was no taking it back. Family servant. So that's what I'd been to them all these years. What Veronica means is that we really appreciate Grandpa's support, Noah tried to correct the situation. He's always been a pillar of support for us. I stared at my plate of unfinished dessert. All the pieces of the mosaic suddenly came together into a clear picture. The infrequent phone calls, the formal visits, the constant requests for money, the disparaging remarks about my age, the unwillingness to hear about my work. It was all part of the same attitude, the attitude of being used rather than respected and loved. Gilbert, are you all right? Elizabeth asked worriedly, noticing my condition. I slowly raised my gaze and looked at Veronica. She was still smiling, but there was a slight worry in her eyes when she noticed the expression on my face. Servant, I repeated quietly. That's not what I meant, Veronica said quickly. It was just a figure of speech. No, I shook my head. That's exactly what you meant. And you know what? You're right. I really have been your servant all these years. Gave money without complaint, never demanded a return, bore the neglect in silence, pretended not to notice you waiting for me to die so you could inherit. A dead silence reigned. Noah looked as if he'd been kicked in the butt. Grandpa, you don't understand. I held up my hand, stopping him. No, Noah, I understand everything perfectly. Perhaps for the first time in years, I see the situation absolutely clearly. I slowly stood up from the table. A strange calmness swept over me, as if I'd finally shed a heavy weight I'd been carrying for far too long. I think you'll be interested to know, I looked around at everyone present, that my fortune is estimated at about $2 million, including this house, investments, and savings. Until today, The sole heir to it all was my grandson Noah. Veronica threw her husband a triumphant look that she didn't have time to hide. That only strengthened my resolve. Today, however, I am making a different decision. My entire fortune, every last cent, will be donated to a charity to support elderly people who have been victims of financial abuse by relatives. Noah jumped up. "Grandpa, you can't!" "I can, Noah, and I'm doing it right now, announcing my decision in front of witnesses. Tomorrow I'll contact a lawyer to draw up the new paperwork." Veronica went pale. This is ridiculous. Because of one reservation? I didn't mean to offend you." "It's not about the clause, Veronica. It's about the attitude behind those words. I was an ATM machine to you, nothing more. And you know what? I'm tired of that role." I turned to Noah. "One more thing. I demand that you pay me back the money I loaned you for the down payment on this house. $150,000 plus interest for 3 years. If I don't receive it within 30 days, I'll file a formal lawsuit." Noah turned even paler. "Grandpa, we don't have that kind of money right now." "Then sell something. The car, the sound system, the Italian couch, or mortgage the house. It's not my problem anymore." There was a heavy silence. The guests sat unmoving, clearly unsure how to react to this family drama unfolding before their eyes. Richard coughed. "Maybe we should leave and give you two a chance to talk in private?" I shook my head. "There's no need. I'm leaving on my own. It was nice to meet you, Richard, Elizabeth, Greg, Pamela. I apologize for this awkward moment. Noah, Veronica." I nodded to them. "Expect a letter from my lawyer." I headed for the exit. Behind me, I heard Veronica start to sob and Noah say something in an apologetic tone to the guests, but I didn't care anymore. For the first time in years, I felt free from the burden of false family relationships. Stepping outside, I took a deep breath of the evening air. There was a surprising clarity in my mind. I knew I had just drastically changed my life, but I felt no fear or regret, only relief from the decision and a strange, almost forgotten feeling of self-respect. I returned home in a state of strange calm. The night was clear, and when I got out of the car, I involuntarily looked up at the stars. They twinkled just as they had 60 years ago when Martha and I first moved into this house. Everything seemed simple and straightforward then. Work, family, a future. Who would have thought that I would find myself in this situation in my declining years? As I entered the house, the first thing I looked at was Edwin's picture. "I'm sorry, son," I whispered. "I tried to replace you for Noah for too long. Perhaps that was my mistake." I made tea and sat in my old chair by the window. I needed to think about what had happened and plan my next steps. The decision I'd made at Noah and Veronica's table hadn't been impulsive, though it looked that way. It had been maturing in me for a long time, but tonight had been the catalyst. The phone rang as the hands of the clock approached midnight. Noah's number. I didn't answer it. A minute later, an incoming message sounded. "Grandpa, please pick up the phone. We need to talk." I put the phone away. There was no point in talking now. Emotions were too strong on all sides. Better to let the situation cool down a bit. Besides, I needed to make sure I was really ready to go all the way. The calls continued at 15 to 20-minute intervals. At one point, Veronica's name appeared on the screen. It was unexpected. She'd never called me directly. I didn't answer again. At 2 in the morning, the phone finally went silent. I went to bed, but sleep didn't come. The events of the last few years replayed in my mind, each episode now seen in a new light. How Noah's attitude had gradually changed after he'd met Veronica. How his visits had become more and more infrequent and formal. How conversations more and more often came down to money. And most importantly, how I let it happen, turning a blind eye to the obvious. Perhaps I was afraid of being all alone. Perhaps I was clinging to the illusion of family. Or more likely, it pained me to admit that Edwin's only descendant had turned out to be so calculating. I woke up in the morning with a headache, but with a clear understanding of what needed to be done. The first thing I did was call Robert Klein, my lawyer and an old friend we'd worked together back at the power plant before he went into law. "Gilbert?" His voice sounded surprised. "Is something wrong? You never call on Sunday." "I need to meet urgently, Robert. It's about the will and a few other legal matters." "Sounds serious. I'm with the grandkids right now, but I can stop by your place tonight about 6 o'clock. Would that work?" "Perfect. Thanks, Robert." As I hung up the phone, the doorbell rang. Ida stood on the doorstep with a concerned look on her face and a bag of fresh buns. "I saw you come back yesterday. You looked upset. What happened?" I invited her in and briefly told her about last night. Ida listened without interrupting, only shaking her head at particularly dramatic moments. "Family servant?" she repeated when I had finished. "And she said that in front of the guests?" "Yes, and so casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world." "What are you going to do now? Are you serious about the charity?" "Absolutely. Robert is coming over tonight to go over the legal details." Ida looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, Gilbert, I told you a long time ago that they were using you, but I didn't think you'd ever take that step." "Neither did I admitted. "But something broke yesterday. Or, on the contrary, it fell into place. I saw the situation for what it was, without self-deception." Ida and I were eating breakfast, discussing possible outcomes when the phone rang again. "Noah." "Do you want to answer it?" Ida asked. I shook my head. Not ready for this conversation yet. "They won't just give up," Ida warned. "It's about too much money." "I know, but I'm not backing down either." After Ida left, I decided to do some gardening. Physical work always helped me clear my thoughts. I was just trimming a rose bush when Noah's car pulled into the driveway. Taking a deep breath, I continued my work, pretending not to notice him. "Grandpa!" Noah was walking quickly toward me. He looked haggard, with red eyes and wrinkled clothes. By the looks of it, he had had a sleepless night. "Hello, Noah," I replied calmly, setting aside the garden shears. "Grandpa, we need to talk. What happened yesterday?" "Yes, we do need to talk, but not here. Let's go inside." In the living room, Noah slumped nervously in his chair while I made tea. His gaze darted around the room, stopping at pictures, furniture, knickknacks, anything that could have been his after my death but was now slipping away. "Grandpa," he began as I sat down across from him, "you misunderstood Veronica. She didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a bad joke." "Really?" I looked him straight in the eye. And it seemed to me that for the first time she was being completely sincere. "No, she's very upset. She cried all night. She really loves you and respects you." "Then why am I only finding this out now, after the threat of disinheritance?" Noah turned pale. "It's not like that. We've always valued you as a family member." "A family member who gets invited to visit twice a year? A family member who is told to keep it simple so as not to embarrass important guests? A family member who is only expected to support you financially without taking an interest in your life?" Noah lowered his gaze. "We've been very busy. Building a career, fixing up the house. At my expense. I was going to pay all the money back, just needed time. 3 years is plenty of time to start paying back what you owe, if you're really going to do it." Noah was silent, unable to find anything to object to. Then he looked up at me pleadingly. "Grandpa, please, let's just put everything back the way it was. We'll change, I promise. We'll visit you more often, call you every day. Veronica is truly sorry. Because you're losing your inheritance, or because you've realized how you've treated me all these years?" Noah lowered his eyes again. We both knew the answer. "Look, Noah," I softened my tone. "I'm not going to make a public drama or defame your name in front of your coworkers, but my decision is final. I'm meeting with a lawyer tonight to draw up a new will and prepare the loan repayment papers." "Grandpa, We don't have that kind of money right now. We've put everything into the house, into renovations. Then you'll have to sell something or take out a loan. That's your problem, not mine. Noah looked depressed. Then his face changed, and I saw tears in his eyes. Dad wouldn't approve of that, he said quietly. I tensed. The mention of Edwin was a painful blow, and Noah knew it. Dad always said that family was the most important thing, he continued, that we should support each other no matter what happens. He'd want his son and father to be there for each other, to take care of each other. Don't you dare, my voice shook. Don't you dare use your father's memory for manipulation. It's not manipulation. I'm just reminding you of his values, of what he believed in. He would never have approved of his father leaving an inheritance to strangers instead of his own grandson. I took a deep breath, trying to contain my emotions. Edwin believed in respect, honesty, and mutual support, not one-sided exploitation under the guise of family relationships. We never exploited you. Yes, we asked for help, but isn't that what family is for? Family isn't just for financial help, Noah. Family is caring, and taking a genuine interest in each other's lives. When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling? Not for formality, but because you were genuinely interested? Noah was silent. When was the last time you offered to help me? Or just called to tell me about your day instead of asking for money for another purchase? I've had a stressful job, a new family. Everyone has a job and responsibilities, Noah. That's no excuse to forget about your only grandfather. We sat in silence. Outside the window, the birds sang and the sun shone, an ordinary Sunday afternoon that would change our lives forever. What can I do to make you change your mind? Noah finally asked. Nothing. My decision is final. But $2 million, your entire fortune, that's insane. You're going to leave your only grandson uninherited because of one lame phrase. No, Noah, not because of the phrase, because of the attitude behind it, because of years of neglect and self-interest. Yesterday was simply the final straw. Noah jumped up, his face contorted with anger and despair. You can't do that. It's not fair. I'm your blood, your only relative. Blood doesn't give you the right to use a person and then expect a reward. We'll sue. We'll contest the will. Prove you're incapacitated, I smiled bitterly. You can try that, but keep in mind that Robert Klein is one of the best lawyers in town. And besides, last night's guests will be excellent witnesses to my sanity and the circumstances leading up to the decision. Noah turned pale. The mention of witnesses had clearly cooled his ardor. Noah, I softened my tone, I don't want to end our relationship with war, but I will no longer be a source of funding for you and Veronica. And yes, it pains me to do so, especially since you're Edwin's son, but sometimes you have to show grit, even if it hurts. You're ruining our lives, Noah said quietly. We have a house loan, a mortgage. Without your help, we could lose everything. You're living beyond your means, Noah. It's your choice, and you have to pay for it too, not me. Noah looked at me pleadingly. At least give us some time. Don't demand repayment of the loan right now. I hesitated. Demanding immediate repayment of such an amount could indeed seriously affect their financial situation. On the other hand, an indulgence could be perceived as weakness and an opportunity to drag out the process. I'll give you 6 months, I said finally. In that time, you must either pay back the entire amount with interest or submit a realistic payment plan approved by my attorney. And Noah, this is my last favor. He nodded, clearly relieved at this small concession. Thank you, grandfather. We'll figure something out. I hope so. Now, if you don't mind, I need to get ready to meet Robert. Noah rose slowly. Are you really going to give everything to the charity? The whole $2 million? Yes, I've already got my eye on a suitable organization, the Foundation for the Protection of the Elderly from Financial Abuse. They do important work. But that's crazy. giving everything you've accumulated in a lifetime to strangers. Not strangers, Noah. To those who have been in a situation similar to mine, those who have been taken advantage of by relatives counting on inheritance. I think that's a worthy use for my money. Noah shook his head. Veronica was right. You do get stubborn and irrational as you get older. I grinned. Maybe. Or, conversely, for the first time in a long time, I'm thinking extremely clearly. Noah headed for the door but turned around on the threshold. This isn't over, Grandpa. We won't give up so easily. I don't doubt that, Noah. After he left, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness at the realization that my only grandson had turned out to be such a stranger, and relief that I'd finally stopped kidding myself. Robert arrived at 6 o'clock sharp, as promised. I'd known him for almost 50 years. He'd started out as a lawyer at the power plant when I was already a senior engineer. Over the years, he had become one of the most respected attorneys in town, specializing in probate law and property disputes. So, Gilbert, he said as we settled into my office, you want to change your will. It's a big decision. Are you sure? I told him about last night and today's conversation with Noah. Robert listened attentively, occasionally making notes in his notebook. I understand your feelings, he said when I was done. But are you sure you want to disinherit your grandson? Maybe you should leave him at least some of it. No, Robert. If I leave any of it, they'll think they can change my mind, keep pushing. I want a complete breakdown of the financial relationship. Robert nodded. Good. Then we need to make things very clear to minimize the chances of a successful challenge. Given your age and the abrupt change of mind, Noah may try to prove you were incapacitated or pressured. I am fully capable, and yesterday's guests can attest to that. Besides, my last medical examination showed that I'm in great shape for my years. That's good. I'll prepare all the necessary documents. As for the charity fund, have you already chosen a specific organization? Yes, the Foundation for the Protection of the Elderly from Financial Abuse. Have you heard of them? Of course. A very reputable organization with transparent reporting. A good choice. We can set things up so that a portion of the funds are given to them right away and the bulk of the money after you die. That way, you can make sure the money is used for its intended purpose. That's exactly what I wanted. Now about the loan to Noah. Do you have any documentation to prove that the money was transferred? I pulled a folder from my desk drawer. Here are the bank statements for the transfer of funds as well as email correspondence where Noah asks for the loan and promises to pay the money back as soon as he gets back on his feet. Robert looked over the documents. That's enough to get us started. I'll prepare a formal demand for repayment of the loan. You said you gave them 6 months. Yes, but with the condition of providing a repayment plan approved by you. Reasonable. I'll include that in the paperwork. We discussed the details for about 2 more hours. Robert asked questions, gave advice, explained the legal nuances. By the time we finished, it was getting dark. I'll have drafts of all the documents ready by Wednesday, Robert said as he gathered his things. Then we can check everything and sign it. And on Thursday, I'll already send the official notice to Noah and the charity. Thank you, Robert. I knew I could count on you. That's what friends are for, Gilbert. By the way, he paused. Are you sure you want to follow through? Family ties are invaluable, especially at our age. I'm sure. Some ties only drain you even if they are family ties. Robert nodded understandingly. Well, I'll see you Wednesday then. Take care of yourself. After he left, I sat in a chair by the window looking out at the night garden. The phone rang again. This time Veronica's number. I muted it. Tomorrow there was another important conversation to be had, with representatives of the charity fund. But now I needed to be alone, to reflect on everything that had happened and to prepare myself for the inevitable changes in my life. On the table was a picture of Edwin, young, smiling, full of hope. "I'm sorry, son," I whispered. "I did the best I could, but sometimes love and money are no substitute for proper parenting." On Monday morning, I called the Foundation for the Protection of Seniors from Financial Abuse. After a brief conversation with the secretary, I was put through to the director of the foundation, Eleanor Higgins. "Mr. Hawthorne," her voice sounded warm and professional, "I've been told you wish to make a donation to our foundation. Not just any donation, Miss Higgins. I plan to give you my entire fortune, about $2 million, including the value of the house and investments." There was silence on the other end of the line. "That's extremely generous, Mr. Hawthorne. May I ask what prompted you to make this decision?" I told her my story briefly, without going into emotional detail. Eleanor listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Unfortunately, your situation is not unique," she said when I finished. "We encounter cases like this all the time. Financial abuse by relatives is one of the most common and least discussed problems of the elderly. That's why I chose your foundation. I want my funds to help others who find themselves in a similar situation. We would be extremely grateful for such support. But, Mr. Hawthorne, before we go any further, I must ask, are you absolutely sure of your decision? Such large donations are often subject to litigation by relatives." "I understand the risks. My attorney, Robert Klein, is already working to protect my decision from challenge as much as possible. I'd like to meet with you in person to discuss the details." "Of course. I'm free tomorrow afternoon. Could you come to our office?" We made an appointment for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. After the call, I felt strangely relieved, like I was finally doing something right, something meaningful. I spent the rest of the day sorting through paperwork and making a list of my assets for Robert. Toward evening, Ida called. "How are you, Gilbert? Noah hasn't come by again?" "No, but he called a few times. I didn't answer." "That's right. Let them suffer the unknown for a while. What does Robert say?" I told her about yesterday's meeting with the lawyer and this morning's conversation with the director of the foundation. "Are you really going to give it all away?" I could hear the surprise in Ida's voice. "You're not keeping anything for a rainy day?" "I have a good pension, Ida, and I'm not selling the house yet. It won't go to the foundation until after I die, so there will be a roof over my head. Still, it's a very decisive step." "You know," I smiled into the phone, "for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. Not out of a sense of obligation to Edwin's memory, not out of fear of loneliness, but because it actually makes sense." Ida was silent for a moment. "I'm proud of you, Gilbert. Not everyone finds the strength to change their life like that at 77. The next day, I met Eleanor Higgins at the Foundation's office, a small but cozy space in downtown Lancaster. Eleanor appeared to be an energetic woman in her 60s with a shrewd eye and determined manners. "Mr. Hawthorne," she shook my hand, "it's a pleasure to meet you in person. Please come in." We settled into her office, where she explained in detail the work of the foundation. Not only did they provide legal assistance to seniors who were victims of financial abuse, but they also ran educational programs, support groups, and worked with social services. "Our goal is not only to help those who have already suffered, but also to prevent similar situations," Eleanor explained. "Many elderly people don't know their rights or are afraid to confront their relatives for fear of being left alone." I nodded, understanding the sentiment all too well. "If you do decide to make such a large donation," she continued, "we could greatly expand our operations, open branches in other cities, increase our legal staff, launch new programs. That's exactly what I want, for my money to help as many people as possible." Eleanor looked at me carefully. "Mr. Hawthorne, I have to ask you a direct question. Are you doing this out of a desire for revenge against your grandson, or out of a sincere desire to help others?" I hesitated. At first, there may have been an element of revenge, But the more I think about it, the clearer I realize that I want my fortune to go to something really important, for it to matter. She nodded. Good. Because revenge is rarely satisfying, but the realization that you've helped others can give real happiness. We discussed the technical details, how the funds would be transferred, how much I would give immediately and how much after I died, how the use of the money would be monitored. We have an interesting program, Eleanor said at the end of the meeting. We organize support groups where older people who have gone through similar experiences can share their stories, support each other. Perhaps you would be interested in participating. I'm not sure. I'm not very good at public speaking. Think about it. Sometimes talking to those who really understand what you're going through can be very healing. On my way out of the foundation office, I ran into an older woman who looked distraught. Eleanor introduced us to each other. Mr. Hawthorne, this is Marjorie Wilson, one of our charges. Marjorie, this is Gilbert Hawthorne, our new benefactor. We exchanged greetings and I couldn't resist asking, "Are you all right, Mrs. Wilson?" Marjorie sighed. My son tried to get me to sell the house again. Says it's dangerous to live alone at my age, that I need supervision, but I know he just wants the money from the sale. I nodded, understanding her situation all too well. So what did you decide? Thanks to the foundation, I found the strength to say no to him. They helped me draw up the paperwork that protects my property. But emotionally, it's still hard. This is my son. I felt a pang of sympathy. I understand, really understand. Maybe Eleanor was right. Maybe I really should have talked to people who had been through similar things. On Wednesday, I met with Robert to sign all the necessary documents, the new will, the transfer of some of the money to the foundation, the formal request for repayment of the loan. Everything was legally flawless. I'll send copies of all the documents to Noah tomorrow morning, Robert said. Be prepared for his reaction. I am ready. I think he's already realized I'm not going to change my mind. Maybe. But when he gets the official papers, it will become a reality. People react differently to these things. Robert turned out to be right. That evening I heard a loud knock on the door. Noah and Veronica stood on the doorstep. Both looked woozy. Noah was pale and Veronica's eyes were red with tears or anger. Grandpa, we need to talk. Noah almost forcefully entered the house without waiting for an invitation. Come on in, I said dryly, closing the door. In the living room, Veronica immediately went on the offensive. How can you do this to us? After all we've done for you. And what exactly have you done for me, Veronica? I asked calmly. We visited you, called you, cared about you. Twice a year, on holidays, and only when you needed money. That's not true, Noah was indignant. We were always thinking of you. Then why have you never asked how I live, what I do for a living, what I care about? Why did every visit or call you made end with a request for financial help? They were silent, unable to find anything to object. Look, I sat back in my chair. I don't want to fight. My decision has been made. The paperwork has been signed. You will receive official notification tomorrow. We'll contest the will, Veronica said coldly. We'll prove that you're incapacitated, that this foundation manipulated you. I smiled. You can try that, but keep in mind that Robert Klein has made provisions for that possibility. I have a recent medical report of full capacity, as well as testimony from your colleagues about the reasons that prompted me to change my will. Noah turned even paler. Have you talked to Richard and Greg? No, but if the case goes to trial, they'll be called as witnesses. I'm sure they'll be interested in telling how Veronica called me family servant. Veronica jumped up, her face contorted with anger. Who the hell do you think you are? You think you can throw away your own grandson's life so easily? We were counting on that money. We have plans, commitments. Exactly, I looked her straight in the eye. You were counting on my money, not on me as a person, Not on your relationship with me, but on my fortune. That's the problem, Veronica. You're just a vindictive old man, she blurted out. You take pleasure in seeing us in despair, don't you? Enjoying your power? Noah tried to stop her. Veronica, don't. But she couldn't hold back any longer. No, let him know. We put up with his tedious stories for years, going to his dinners, listening to the same stories about the power plant. You think we were interested? We only did it out of respect, and now he's throwing us out of his life because of one sentence. I listened to her, and a strange calmness filled me. Veronica was finally telling the truth, showing her true attitude towards me. Thank you for your honesty, Veronica, I said as she took a breath. For the first time in all the years we've known each other, you're actually being sincere with me. She stammered, realizing she had said too much. Grandfather, that's not what Veronica meant. Noah tried to correct the situation. She's just upset. No, Noah, that's exactly what she meant. And you know what? I'm grateful for that sincerity. Now I'm finally convinced I made the right decision. I stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. You'll get the papers tomorrow. You'll have 6 months to pay back the loan or submit a payment plan. At this point, I don't think we have anything more to discuss. You're going to regret this, Noah said quietly. When you're all alone, when there's no one to take care of you in your old age, you'll regret it. Perhaps, but I'd rather have honest loneliness than a fake family. They left, slamming the door loudly. I was left alone in the silence of the house, but strangely I felt no sadness or regret, only relief, as if I'd shed a heavy weight I'd been carrying for too long. In the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in my new life. I met with representatives of the foundation, studied their programs, even started attending a support group for elderly victims of financial abuse. The first meeting of the group was a challenge for me. I had never been inclined to publicly disclose my feelings, but as I listened to the stories of others, Marjorie, whose son tried to foreclose on her home, Thomas, whose daughter emptied his savings, Helen, who was convinced by her granddaughter to sign over her house to her and then evicted to a nursing home, I realized I was not alone in my situation. When it was my turn to speak, I told my story simply and honestly, and I was surprised by the response. Understanding nods, words of encouragement, no judgment for disinheriting my grandson. You did the right thing, Gilbert, said Helen, an older woman with kind eyes. It's hard to stand up to family, especially when you're afraid of being alone. But sometimes it's necessary to preserve your own dignity. No one heard from Noah and Veronica for a month. Then came a letter from their lawyer offering a compromise. They were willing to apologize and restore family relations in exchange for a change in the will. I responded with a brief denial. Another month later, Noah came in alone. He looked exhausted. He had lost weight, dark circles under his eyes. "Grandpa, we're selling the house," he said without preamble. "Veronica has filed for divorce." I was surprised, but not shocked. "I'm sorry, Noah." "No, you're not sorry," he grinned bitterly. "This is exactly what you wanted after all, to ruin our lives. I wanted only one thing, for you to see me as a person, not a source of money. Everything else is a consequence of your decisions, not mine." Noah was silent, looking down at the floor. "We won't be able to pay back the loan on time, even with the sale of the house. The market's not at its best right now. Talk to Robert. He'll help set up a realistic repayment plan. You're really not going to change your mind, even now that you see where it's gotten you?" I looked at my grandson, searching his face for any sign of remorse, of genuine regret for the lost relationship rather than the lost money, but saw only weariness and disappointment. "No, Noah. My decision is final." He nodded as if he'd expected that answer. "You know, I'm starting to think that maybe you're right. Maybe all we really saw in you was money, and maybe I lost something more valuable because of it. a real relationship with my grandfather. It was the closest thing to an apology I could get from him, and probably the most sincere thing he'd said to me in years. It's never too late to start over, Noah. No financial background, just as two people bound by blood and the memory of Edwin. He raised his eyes to me with a flicker of hope in them. Is that what you'd want? After everything that's happened? I'd like to try, but this time, on equal terms. I'm not your ATM, you're not my heir, just grandfather and grandson. Noah smiled weakly. I'll think about it. Right now I have to deal with the divorce, the sale of the house. But then maybe we could try it later. He left, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever see him again. But for the first time in a long time, something real slipped into our conversation, something that gave a faint hope for the future. 6 months later, my life had changed beyond recognition. Not only did I participate in a support group, but I became its facilitator. Twice a week we gathered in a small room at the foundation's office, 10 to 12 seniors, united by common experiences and a desire to help each other. You know, when I first came here, I was sure I would never be able to talk about my feelings in front of the group, I said at one of the meetings. My generation is not used to such openness, but it is here, among you, that I have found the understanding and support I lacked in my own family. The members of the group, Marjorie, Thomas, Helen, and others, became something like a new family for me. We not only discussed our problems, but also went to cafes, attended concerts, and had picnics in the park. It was a different kind of socializing than I was used to, but it brought joy and a sense of belonging. I started volunteering at the foundation, using my engineering skills to solve technical problems. I helped with repairing equipment, setting up computers, even designed an automatic watering system for the small garden behind the office. Gilbert, you're an invaluable employee, Eleanor joked. If all our volunteers were so skillful, we'd save a fortune on maintenance. Ida noticed the change in me, too. You look younger, Gilbert, she said over a cup of tea one day. It's as if you've shrugged off a dozen years. I have, I smiled. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm living my life instead of existing waiting for my grandson to deign to call or stop by. And how's Noah? Do you two communicate? Sometimes. He calls once a month. The conversations are awkward for now, but at least they're sincere. He did divorce Veronica, sold the house. Now he's renting a small apartment and trying to start from scratch. And how's that working out for you? Strangely, I'm almost proud of him. Not that we've become close, but at least the falseness in the relationship is gone. That's already progress. My decision to donate the fortune to a charitable foundation was more significant than I could have anticipated. The amount was large enough for the foundation to open a new branch in a neighboring town, expand its legal and social work staff, and launch an educational program for medical and social workers to identify signs of financial abuse. You have no idea how many people we'll be able to support because of your contribution, Eleanor said at a meeting of the Board of Trustees, of which I was now a member. It's not just money, it's an opportunity to change the lives of hundreds of seniors. I looked at the graphs and tables showing the plans for the fund's development and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Perhaps for the first time in my life I was doing something truly meaningful, something that would leave a mark after me. One warm fall day, my support group members and I had a picnic in the city park. There were about 10 people. Marjorie had brought her famous apple pie. Thomas was playing the harmonica. Helen was telling funny stories from her youth. I sat on the bench watching them and thought about the strange twists of fate. Who would have thought that at 77 I would find a new family, not by blood, but by spirit? That I would find a new meaning of life not in taking care of my grandson, but in helping elderly people like myself. What are you thinking about, Gilbert? Marjorie sat down beside me, holding out a piece of pie. About life. About how things can change in 6 months. For the better, I hope. I smiled, looking at our friends, at the golden leaves swirling in the air, at the clear sky overhead. Definitely for the better, Marjorie. Definitely for the best. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't feel an ounce of regret for the decision I'd made. Yes, I had lost the illusion of a family relationship with Noah and Veronica, but in return, I gained true friendship, respect, self-esteem, and the realization that my life and my decisions mattered. I was no longer the family servant. I was Gilbert Hawthorne, a man who had the courage to change his life at 77 and was not afraid to start over.